Boxing Day to our Canadian friends. We have our briefing for 9:30 in regards to the blizzard, what additional information we have from the overnight hours, as well as key information for the public. I'm joined by our Undersheriff William Cooley from the Erie County Sheriff's Office, our Department of Public Works Commissioner William Gary Jr., our Deputy County Executive Lisa Shamara, as well as our Commissioner of the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Dan Neverth. I want to thank everyone who's standing with me because they've been putting incredible amounts of hours, some of them in the field, doing incredible work. And on behalf of all the people of Erie County, I also want to thank all the first responders, all the public works employees, all the dispatchers, anybody out there, law enforcement, who's worked incredibly difficult situation, often with just a few hours sleep over 3 days. So thank you to each and every one of you who've been going above and beyond the call of duty. Snow, unfortunately, is still dropping in the city and the north towns from 4 a.m. today through 1 p.m. tomorrow. Up to 8 to 12 inches is expected in the most persistent band area. This is not helpful as we're trying to recover and clear off streets and get into areas that still have not had a plow. There is, of course, a state of emergency in effect for all of Erie County. We were able to lift the driving ban in some communities, but there still is a driving ban in the city of Buffalo. The city of Buffalo is impassable in most areas. And once again, to our friends in media, if you could mute your phones, I'm going to lower my volume right here so we don't hear you just right now. But the city of Buffalo is impassable in most areas, while mains may have a lane open for emergency traffic or two. Most secondaries as well as side streets have not been touched yet. This is primarily because the efforts were going towards opening up areas around hospitals, around nursing homes, around other emergent care locations. We also were assisting in life-saving response, so high lifts were going out with ambulances to save lives. I'll give you an example of that. An individual, a woman who was able to get to ECMC, who was going through a complicated pregnancy, could not be handled at ECMC, needed to go to Oshai Children's Hospital. We had one of our county contracted high lifts leading the way, making an area that was otherwise impassable passable to Oshai Children's Hospital. And I have the very good news to report that the pregnancy went well and the baby was born safely. Example of the work that's being done. Life safety was the first and primary issue they've been dealing with. Most abandoned cars in the city have unfortunately not yet been towed. There's cars everywhere, pointing the wrong direction on roads. They've basically been plowed in. They need to be dug out and towed, and it's going to take time to clear those. While some have been towed, not everyone. Tractor trailers as well. There's tractor trailers. There's abandoned buses on roads. So it's a very, very tenuous situation still in the city. The suburbs are better, but there's still a driving ban, not just in Buffalo, but also in the towns of Amherst, Cheektowaga, Clarence, Evans, Hamburg, West Seneca, and the city of Lackawanna. I've talked to many of those officials, or some of the officials this morning, and they are all of agreement that the driving ban will not be lifted anytime soon. So expect that the driving ban to be in effect for all those communities through the daylight hours at least. That is because conditions are bad. Main roads may be open, but they are for emergency travel only. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of travel of individuals who do not appear to be doing anything other than joyriding or going to a friend's house. They're not emergency personnel. I spoke to individuals today, including Supervisor Brian Culpa, who's said that the Amherst PD, now that they've settled down on life-saving rescues, are going to go out there and they're going to stop people in intersections. They're going to see if they have emergency travel authorization, and if they don't, they're going to ticket them and send them back on their way. It's the only thing we must do in this situation. Police have been working round the clock on life-saving measures, so they are not been going out there ticketing people, but now they're going to. Because truthfully, you are harming our ability to recover, and you may be the reason that we're not able to get an ambulance to a location, because cars are still getting stuck out there. Conditions are bad, especially after the snow that fell in the overnight hours. Some neighborhoods in these towns do have snow removed, but others do not, or it's too dangerous because they still do not have it curb to curb, and they have 8 to 10 foot drifts, so you can't see where you're going. You can't find out exactly where you're going when you're trying to make a turn. So please, unless you're emergency personnel, do not drive. If you are in the area where the driving ban is lifted, a travel advisory is still in place, and there's still areas where it's not so easy. Tonawanda is a lot clearer, decided after talking with the supervisor to lift the travel ban, but they also are getting hit with a lot of snow. And reports are that people who do not have appropriate vehicles are driving and getting stuck, which makes it, of course, very difficult, even in an area where the ban was lifted. Power outages, we do have some good news. NYSEG is down to 62 customers countywide. They restored hundreds yesterday. Thank you to all the men and women of NYSEG for your great work, and thank you to the men and women of National Grid for your great work too. More than 13,000 customers were restored in the 24-hour period, and they have 12,473 that are currently out, and they're hoping to restore a good portion of those today. But as I said yesterday, there are some that still might not get restored until Tuesday, tomorrow, due to the serious nature of substation damage. Fatalities. The Erie County Department of Health Medical Examiner's Office has been reviewing reported death cases to determine those that died as a result of the blizzard. There have been multiple reports of death out there from various outlets and sources, but not all were related to the storm, such as a person dying in their heated home of a natural cause, but then being picked up by police because ambulance service wasn't available, or the normal funeral home pickups were not available, and those people were transported to hospitals. So we've heard a lot of different numbers with regards to deaths associated with this. The Erie County Department of Health Medical Examiner's Office confirmed through last night 13 individuals who had died as a result of the blizzard. Died in a car, died outside from exposure, died in a snow shovel or cardiac event regarding the snow blowing, were found in a home. I have the very sad news to report that in addition to the 13 confirmed deaths yesterday, the Erie County Department of Health Medical Examiner's Office has confirmed an additional 12 deaths, bringing the total for the blizzard to 25 deaths countywide. I do not have at this time the location, age, gender, or manner of death. We are hoping to have that very soon, and then we will report back out to media on that information. But these are an additional 12 deaths that the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office has confirmed were related to the blizzard, not someone who died of natural causes in their home. I have to offer, once again, my deepest condolences to all the family members, friends, and loved ones of those who've lost a loved one. There are probably individuals who have not been yet notified that their loved one has perished. And I just want to say this is a horrible situation. This may actually be now more deaths than occurred during the blizzard of '77. The blizzard of '77 lasted longer, 3 days of terrible conditions. This was 2 days of terrible conditions. But the ferocity of the storm was worse than the blizzard of '77. And now it appears we've had more deaths countywide. And once again, I want to offer my deepest condolences to all who lost a loved one. This is just terrible. A number of the deaths that we reported on yesterday were cardiac events related to snow shoveling and snow blowing. We talked about this. We talk about it all the time. But if you are a senior or have a noted cardiac condition, which includes high blood pressure, you could be 35 years old but have high blood pressure, and that's a cardiac condition, please do not attempt to shovel or snow blow the snow. What happens when you go outside in these colder conditions is, truthfully, your arteries and veins constrict, which makes it tougher for your heart to pump the blood. And when it has to work harder, and when it works harder, it has a greater risk of having a cardiac event. And there were a number of deaths that we announced as part of the 13 yesterday that were related to snow shoveling and snow blowing. So if you have a noted cardiac condition, no matter how young you are, please do not snow shovel, please do not snow blow. This is heavy, thick snow that in some areas is feet of depth because of the drifting. We don't want you to become another statistic from our medical examiner's office. And considering it's supposed to be 50 degrees later this week, a lot of the snow is going to melt at the end of the week. So if you are in that situation, please do not shovel. We are aware of the person who was confirmed to have died of carbon monoxide poisoning in Niagara County. This is another example why we say, please clear your furnace vents, clear your dryer vents. Everyone should have a carbon monoxide detector in their home. You can't smell carbon monoxide. It's not like the gas that comes off of a stove where they have that extra treatment in it so you can smell it. It smells like rotten eggs. If you're using a generator, only use a generator more than 20 feet from your house with the exhaust pointed in the opposite direction. Please do neighbor checks. We need you to go out there and do neighbor checks. If you have seniors who may be living in the house next door that were without power for quite some time, and it's safe to do it now, please go knock on their doors. I know it's difficult to get around, but knock on their door because their phone might not be working, especially if they have a cell phone. See if you can get them to respond. So please do a neighbor check. We've had many reports of neighbors doing great things for neighbors, helping them out, getting their vehicles unstuck, taking care of them in very difficult situations, bringing them in. I had a story I just heard from the city of Lackawanna Mayor Annette Iafallo that there was a tour bus that was a scheduled tour bus driving through our region, which was a winter wonderland tour of tourists from across the world that happened to get stuck in Lackawanna, and they were taken to the warming shelter in Lackawanna at the senior center where they do have cots and they have other equipment, and these tourists are getting more than they bargained for with regards to their winter wonderland tour as they've gone through one of the worst storms in U.S. history. But our people came together. People in Lackawanna were delivering food and other items so that these individuals could survive in a difficult situation. So I want to thank everyone out there who's worked incredible time and effort, from the paid professionals, the volunteers, and just the people being good neighbors in Erie County for all the work that you've done. Thank you to all. I know it was just terrible. This situation is horrible. We're still dealing with snow. It stopped snowing here at the Emergency Operations Center in Cheektowaga, but it was coming down at a pretty good rate of 2 to 3 inches the hour in the overnight hours, and it is in the northern section of Erie County now. So some of the areas that were a little clear are getting it again, and of course areas like Amherst, Clarence, Buffalo that have a driving ban are still getting more snow, and that's not great. I'm going to, Under Sheriff, I'll turn it over to you to say a few words, and then we'll open it up to questions from media as we're trying to get to another place very soon. But more importantly, we wanted to get this information out to the public. So Under Sheriff William Cooley to provide some information from the Sheriff's Office. And thank you for the work that he did. He personally was picking up and delivering youth detention workers to go for our youth detention facility on East Ferry to replace those who had been in the youth detention facility, our employees, for more than 3 days straight. He did the same, I know, for Sheriff's Office deputies for the holding center. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, County Executive. I'd like to express my condolences to everyone who may have lost a loved one as a result of this storm. It's a generational storm that unfortunately we haven't begun to really assess its full toll, but there'll be some focus in the coming days on that. I can tell you our deputies have been working incredibly long hours in both the police services and the jail management side. In some instances, they've been at work for 2.5 days now, and our dispatchers and 911 call takers are enduring the same situation. So thank you for their incredible effort. In some situations, deputies have actually used their own equipment to assist with rescue operations. But we are beginning to transition to from rescue operations into med runs and dialysis runs, and assisting essential personnel get into hospitals. We're assisting a few doctors presently that have some emergency surgery scheduled. So our resources are being focused in that vein. We have a deputy in Batavia that is on a blood run, and his destination is Buffalo General Hospital and Sisters Hospital. So we're trying to help in that vein to the extent that we can. And also we're working in conjunction in those endeavors with the county parks rangers. So we appreciate their effort in this endeavor as well. So as we begin to get an upper hand on this storm, I would just encourage people to please continue to abide by any travel bans and warnings. And if you're out there, you're just going to complicate matters on first responders. So thank you.
Thank you, Under Sheriff, and thank you once again for the incredible work of the Sheriff's Office, all law enforcement, volunteer fire, the full-time paid fires from all the various agencies. Just a horrible situation that we can see sort of the light at the end of the tunnel, but this is not the end yet. We are not there. There are driving bans, as I noted, in communities that will continue to exist for some time, at least through the daylight hours, and maybe even into the overnight hours into tomorrow. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. I'd ask you, if you are on the WebEx, if you can, to click to raise your hand if you do have a question. Otherwise, I will call them one by one, and please keep yourself muted until I've identified you. Why don't we start with John Harris of the Buffalo News? Do you have a question, John?
I didn't have an immediate question yet, sorry.
No question, that's fine.
Nope.
We have Lauren Hall. Lauren, please unmute yourself.
Hi, we're just looking for some clarification on the number of deaths. I know you said 25 in Erie County. Earlier this morning, we heard 20 in the city of Buffalo. So are the 20 in the city of Buffalo included in that 25 in Erie County?
What the official death count comes from the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office. There are deaths that have been received by the city of Buffalo that may not have been deaths associated with the blizzard that were taken to hospitals for placement in the morgue until they could be distributed to the family in the funeral parlors. So the official death count from the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office for all deaths in Erie County is 25. What happens is once the body is, I hate to be talking about this, but once the body is received at the hospital, the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office works with the hospital to determine the cause of death. It's not to say that the city of Buffalo didn't pick up 20 bodies and take them in. That is probably an accurate statement, but they may not all have been related to the storm. So that's why I'm noting the official death total for all of Erie County is determined by the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office, who's the party that makes the official determination on cause of death, because a police officer is not authorized to make a determination on the cause of death, is the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office, and they have 25 is the current total for all of Erie County. A good portion of those from the city of Buffalo, and we hope to later today announce the breakdown based on the location. And it's not to denigrate anyone who lost a loved one during the storm that may not have been a direct death associated with the blizzard, but we do know of cases of which individuals were taken to the hospital dead, were found in their home, or were reported dead by a family member that were not directly attributable to a blizzard, such as an individual who died in their sleep in a home in which they had a heated home, they went to bed last night, they woke up, they were deceased. We have a question from Dominic Lavulo from Spectrum News.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
We are seeing a lot of posts on social media about people who are running out of food, and even some of our team that was able to make it to a hotel is starting to see that the hotel is rationing their supplies at this point. Is there any plan about how we can get more resources and food to people who are running out at this time?
That is a concern that we're working on. We're working on it also for our shelters. We had a conversation this morning about having to potentially go outside of the county to pick up food at other locations and bring it in, even for those first responders that have been working nonstop. We are aware of it. I'm hopeful that some of the other suburbs that were closed in a driving ban today will be able to be open tomorrow, such that the major supermarkets, Tops and Wegmans, will be open. The supermarkets are considered emergency personnel. We, of course, are allowing Tops and Wegmans to get their replacement shipments in if possible. For example, all the prepared food that was probably done before the storm all has to be thrown out because it's all past its date time. So we are working to allow the emergency responders that are associated with the grocery stores to do that. We understand This is a concern. It's why we advise people before these storms to make sure you have at least a full week's supply of food, at least 2 weeks' supply of medication, because we have seen storms that have dragged on and it's taken more than a week to recover. So I do feel for the folks out there. You do have my deepest apologies. I want to thank Wegmans and Tops, which have made deliveries, not to the general public, but have been able to get food or they allowed us to pick up food at their closed stores so that we could deliver it for first responders. And I want to thank them for doing that. That was tremendous, and it just brightened a lot of people's faces who had been working for 48 hours straight just to see that they could get a salami sandwich or a salad after maybe not eating that much in the last 24 hours. WBEN.
Mark, we've been hearing concerns about looting in some parts of the city, maybe the county. What have you heard about that, and what can you do to try and stop this, considering everything else that the county and the city are trying to do?
I have heard reports of that. There have been a few scattered reports. I'm heartbroken about the deaths. Just absolutely devastated to see this many deaths. And then to find out that there's looting going on in our community at the same time we're still recovering bodies is just horrible. I'll turn it over to our law enforcement professional here, the undersheriff, if he's got more information. But we talk about this being a city of good neighbors, and we have so many stories about there being a city of good neighbors, and then we hear this. It's just horrible. The law enforcement's been working on life-saving. As I said, law enforcement is going to probably transition in the next 24 to 40 hours into their traditional duties. But I would ask people that we have one of the worst storm probably in our lifetime and maybe in the history of the city and our community, and to see this happening is just terrible. But Undersheriff, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, County Executive. Yeah, it's unfortunate that there's some opportunistic criminals in our society, and I don't have specific details, but I know there was some burglaries that took place in Buffalo, and it's my understanding in one instance Buffalo PD had made an arrest and perhaps even recovered a weapon. But that being said, as the police are able to mobilize, we will be responding to these situations much quicker than we were earlier in this storm. So,
Thank you, sir. Kevin Jolly, Fox 29. Need you to unmute your phone, Kevin.
I'm sorry, County Executive. Hey, I have a question about independent contractors. They're going to be coming out of the woodwork here to help people clean their driveways.
I could barely hear you, Kevin.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about independent contractors. Folks are obviously going to be coming out of the woodwork to help dig people out. I haven't been home in 4 days, and we've got an offer from a contractor if it's above 36 inches, they're going to charge $400 to clean our driveway. Is there any ceiling that could be put on what folks charge to help folks clean up their driveways and get folks out?
Well, price gouging is illegal in an emergency situation. I would suggest that the Erie County Department of Public Advocacy has a Division of Consumer Protection, as well as the Attorney General's office. I don't have those numbers handy, but if you believe that there are issues of price gouging, please call those numbers, and our media representative will share those with the members of the media. Dan Meyer will be providing that to media representatives. So if you believe there is price gouging, I would suggest you call either the Attorney General's office, Consumer Affairs Division, or the Erie County Department of Public Advocacy's Consumer Protection Division, and we will go in to determine price gouging. I am not aware of us being able to set the rate for snow plowing or anything like that, but we can visit afterwards price gouging, and it is a crime. And if somebody is engaged in price gouging, they can be charged with that. I have, John Harris, did you have another question, or is your hand still up from before?
Yeah, actually, I have a question. I just had two for you. On the power outages, I guess, is the issue still like the substations, freezing there and drifts, or is there any kind of expectation on when you expect the outages to be resolved? And the second one was just, have you ever heard any reports of hospitals running out of supplies and food at this point too?
Yes, but I'm going to turn it over to our Commissioner of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Dan Neverth. They've been involved with trying to ensure that there is appropriate resources for hospitals, as well as he can talk about the other issue.
Oh, I can address the hospital issue. The number one resource of any hospital are the employees. So we've been working with all of our partners and the National Guard to assist in getting employees swapped out. There were a lot of people that have worked more than 48 hours in the hospitals, worked the day before the storm or held over, and have continued to work on through. So when it comes to the resources, that's the number one resource that we're focused on, is getting people there. We have not heard of any additional issues. I know early on some of the hospitals were having some problems with the supplies that actually generate oxygen within their facilities, but we haven't really received anything else additional. I can tell you that a lot of things are moving throughout the primary routes at this point here, including fuel and other things. And one of our tasks is to make sure that those primary routes are open with the appropriate people utilizing them, not people who feel they should be utilizing them. So we feel confident that those vital supplies to get to hospital facilities, as well as our needs to maybe get them to the shelters, are included. I did want to add one thing, though, about the looting, as it was mentioned before. People might think, okay, a 7-Eleven gas station is looted and it really doesn't make a big impact. We have resources that are coming from all over the state and all over other areas as part of the fire mutual aid plan. They come in, we're using task forces now to get to areas within the city of Buffalo to do responses, especially with critical care cardiac arrests, to take people to the hospital. The need for refueling from a lot of these agencies that come in, they come preloaded with credit cards to be able to go to gas stations. We have well over a dozen gas stations now that have been reported back to us that are inoperable because the convenience side of them has been looted and the equipment inside has been rendered ineffective, and thus the pumps for the fueling are ineffective. So if you don't think that there's a trickle down from going in and looting and grabbing individual little things, this is a drastic implication for us that we now have to deal with to find alternate fuel sources. So that ambulance that is maybe just going to go a block to refuel now has to go to a facility sometimes outside of the city of Buffalo to be refueled. So again, there is a tremendous impact when it comes to the looting, and that impacts our ability to resupply a lot of the facilities that we have to resupply.
Thank you. This is going to be the last question from Ed Dranch. If media has additional questions they need answered, they can contact our media representative, Dan Meyer. But Ed Dranch, you have the last question.
Hi, Mark. I have just two quick questions. I'm being contacted by some folks who are having problems with the snow hotline. They're saying that it's just recordings, that they're not able to really talk to anyone. Is there a problem with the snow hotline, or is it manned? And if so, is there a time frame in which it is manned? That's number one. And number two, is there a hotline to call if someone is trying to find someone who's missing in the storm or who has potentially been pulled or found dead as a result of this storm?
I'll start with the second question. I'm not aware of a hotline at this point for that, because there's individuals have been picked up by multiple police sources. Eventually, our medical examiner's office will have the full records of each individual, but I'm not aware of a hotline. Regarding the first one, the snow line is working. It is just getting absolutely inundated with calls. There are hundreds and hundreds of calls coming in an hour, which what was happening is there's a queue, and if you happen to call when one of our call receivers hangs up, you can get through. If you have tried calling and you're getting the busy signal, we just ask you to try to call back. But these are for serious issues, like you need dialysis and you need a ride for dialysis, or your medication, your nitroglycerin is run out, you need nitroglycerin pills. It's not for an update on the weather. It's not for when's the driving ban going to get lifted in Amherst and Buffalo. And I've heard from our call takers that those are the calls that are coming in. I know people are inconvenienced, but The problem we're seeing, like we saw early on, the calls that were coming in for 911 initially were for like food delivery and things like that. I mean, that is just not acceptable. Call 911 for life-threatening situations. If you're in a life-threatening situation, call 911. We've had 20,000 calls that have been received during this event. I was just informed. And the 858 SNOW is for serious issues, but that are not immediately life-threatening. So we can't have people calling saying, when is the driving ban going to get lifted for the throughway? That is not the use of that. And you're hurting us because there are people who are trying to call in, including dialysis centers. Dialysis centers have been calling in that number. We've also had to give them another number, which is not for public disclosure, so that they could contact us because the SNO number has been inundated with calls, hundreds of calls an hour. And I know people are scared and they want more information, but I'm hopeful that they get their information either from this broadcast, from the local media, because there's just some of the calls that are coming in that are just completely irrelevant to the purpose of the 858 SNO number. With that, we will close today's press briefing. Once again, I just have to offer my deepest condolences to those who lost a loved one as a result of this horrible situation. Never thought I'd face this. I thought the storm that we faced in 2014 would have been the worst, in which we had 14 deaths, but this has far surpassed it, and there still are probably additional deaths that will be announced later today. So to all, my deepest condolences, and just thank you to all who've worked very hard to get us through this once-in-a-lifetime generational blizzard. Thank you. Take care. Be safe and well to all. Thank you, everyone.
The thing is, actually, the coal mine has been